Can we have a bit of quiet, people? Can I introduce to the stage Fergus Mainland, our AU Activities Officer, and the beautiful Olivia, our Education Officer, who are your hosts for today.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much. Good afternoon, and welcome to Luther's for the 2022 Candidates Question Time. But before we dive into this year's questions to all of the candidates, a really important announcement, and that is to say that voting is open.
Woo!
As of about 10 minutes ago, you can now head on to the Student Union website. You can cast your vote for all of your incoming sabbatical officers and liberation officers. You've got plenty to choose from, plenty of manifestos to read. And if you missed out on the debates last week, you can head over to YouTube and watch those on the NUTV channel. We've also got this candidate question time where we'll be running through all of the candidates across the board for all the positions. So plenty of excitement to look forward to. We'll be kicking things off in a couple of minutes or so with the NUS referendum for the Say Yes to NUS campaign and the Say No to NUS campaign. But before we dive into all of that, we've just got a quick statement of respect to read out.
So, NUSU welcomes all Newcastle University students to the 2022 election events organised by NUSU. Our priority is to facilitate a fair and democratic election, and we believe in freedom of speech and the right for all students to express their views. However, we will not tolerate harassment or discrimination of any kind. We always ask that you treat fellow students, colleagues, and staff with respect. Anyone displaying rude, aggressive, or other inappropriate behaviour, either online or in the room, will be immediately removed and will be unable to play an active role in this or future debates relating to the 2022 student elections.
So, without further ado, we shall invite the first set of candidates, Abby Hutchinson and Miles Ogden, up on stage to run through questions for the NUS referendum. So what we'll do, we've got about 3 or 4 questions for each set of candidates, but before we dive into those, if we ask Miles and Abby to give their opening statements, just like the debates, but this time you've got 30 to 40 seconds to make your statements. So Miles, if you'd like to go first, please.
I'm campaigning for Say No to the NUS. Since we left 5 years ago, the Students' Union has saved £255,000 in affiliation fees from the NUS. And since the academic year 2019-18, the NUS has reduced its number of full-time liberation officers from 20 down to 7. They've cut officers such as women, black, LGBT+. Does this sound like an organisation which is there to represent students? I think we can save this money by keeping it inside the union, and I think we'll be better off if we vote no.
And Abby?
Hello, everyone. I'm Abby. I'm president of the Student Union this year, and I'm running the Say Yes to NUS campaign. I think the time is right for us to go back into NUS. There are so many benefits that it can bring to us as a union, which help our day-to-day running of things, which ultimately will help you. They have expertise. They have a network that we're unable to be a part of at the moment, and 95% of students' unions are in NUS. So I think the time is right for us to become a part of it again, and there's no time more important than ever for collectivism on students' rights.
Great stuff. So the first question is for both of you. Why do you think we left in the first place? And do you think students have forgotten about the importance of NUS in the time since? Miles, do you want to go first?
Well, I don't think students have forgotten about the importance of the NUS, because I don't think students in general know what the NUS is and what it does. I think from what was conducted in the last referendum, there was loads of people going around saying, what do you think the NUS stands for? They mainly said student cards. Since then, the NUS nearly went bankrupt back in 2019, and they've actually outsourced their student card to Totem, a different company. And one of the best things is we are outside the NUS. We can get a Totem card right now because, and you can get 10% off at the co-op. students never really understood what the NUS was, what it did.
Just going to stop you there. We've got plenty of questions to get through. Abby?
Yeah, so I think the reason that we left NUS is because sabbatical officers at the time were going to conferences and felt like their voices weren't being heard. And there was a movement at the time where, you know, a few unions did decide that it was right for them at that point to leave. However, since then, NUS has reformed. They now have their headquarters in Manchester, which is great. They've got a lot more of a northern network. You know, we wanted to start a northeast network since leaving. Hasn't happened. It's really hard when you've got so many things going on a day-to-day basis to be able to maintain those connections. So I think that although students might not see every day what NUS are doing, we're actually benefiting a lot from their national campaigns. So
plenty of questions to get through. And Abby, actually, the second one is for you. In your debate on Friday, you mentioned the benefits of representation at a higher level for students, but what will this look like on a day-to-day basis?
So on a day-to-day basis, it means that when we're running campaigns within the union, we have access to their online platforms as well as events and conferences where we can get expert evidence-based research on key issues like spiking, student safety. They ran an amazing housing campaign nationally. They also lobby to make sure that student loans are more equitable. These are all things that we don't have the ear of the government for, and that they are doing on a daily basis. They prevented student loan threshold from moving back in November, and this is something that we were concerned about but felt powerless to resolve. So honestly, it's so important. You might not see it on a day-to-day basis, but there is so much going on, and it's a democratic process, so you can make sure that your voice is heard by bringing to them any issues you think they should be campaigning on. So,
and Miles, finally, this one for you. On Friday's debate, and you mentioned it already, you talked almost exclusively about the finances of NUS. Can you give us a different and substantial reason as to why your campaign is right for students?
Well, for once, I just mentioned in the opening statement about the representation the NUS gives. It has cut the number of officers directly who are there for you to represent them on a national scale. They have less of those people giving their voices than when we were back in 2016. As well, they have cut their staff by more than half. They weren't just sitting around doing nothing. They were fulfilling the services the NUS does, which they offer now, but less services than when we left because those staff were there doing stuff for students.
Great stuff. So thank you very much, Miles and Abby. As I said, we've got rapid fire questions for all of our candidates today, but that was the questions on the NUS referendum. If they persuaded you or won you over, head over to the NUSU website and you can cast your vote along with the votes for all of our candidates today. But a round of applause for Abby and Miles.
Hi, so the next category is the Activities Officer. The Activities Officer primarily acts as a representative for all societies, planning, training, events, and ensuring equality, diversity, and inclusion across the board. The candidates for this role are Kira Blows, Harris Qureshi, Lily Johnston, Matt Hall, Nav Baragida, and Xuan Lee. Sorry, I'm really rubbish with names. If you'd like to come up to the stage, those candidates, please. Okay. Right. Any final Activities Officer candidates? Nope. Okay, bro. So, first question is for you all. Sorry. If you would like to give your 30-second opening statement, you want to take it in turns. Harris, would you like to go first? Thanks.
Thought it was a minute, but I'll keep it as brief as I can. Simple question you have to ask yourself. Would you rather a sabbatical officer who has to spend a week, a few months, first term, acclimatizing to the role, or would you want a sabbatical officer who can start supporting you the very first day to come into the office? I've been helping student activities for the last 8 years, whether you know it or not. And for me, that makes me the ideal candidate for this position. Ever since I co-founded Newcastle in 2014, ever since I've been on the Society Executive Committee 4 times, ever since I've been supporting funding, making society more inclusive and accessible, for those reasons, I urge you to vote for me.
Thanks very much.
Hi, my name's Kiara Blows, and I want to be your next activities officer because I want societies to have the most amazing time next year. So being involved in various sides of the SU means I know how to listen to you and bring about collaborative unity and support while making it enjoyable. So see better, see Blows.
Hi, I'm Matt Hall. I'm running for Activities Officer. My manifesto is based around key 3 points: enabling societies to give back locally, nationally, and internationally, giving committees far more support than they get now, and making the union work for you, be an inclusive and safe environment. So if that's what you want, then vote Matt for that.
Perfect. Thank you all. So the first question is for all of you, and I'm going to start with Matt, go in reverse order. So, if successful in these elections, what would a successful year look like to you?
I think a successful year would look like societies with high membership, societies that have been able to run countless events, the union having a really positive impact on the environment and charities, and everyone just having a fun time.
So a successful year for me would be, first of all, making sure that everyone on committee is adequately trained. I think so many committee members got really burnt out this year, so to make sure that they're all prepared. And then in doing so, then that trickles down into everyone having really safe and inclusive and accessible events, and to just boost membership in general and be more inclusive and have more collaborations across the union. And then again, just so everyone has the best time ever.
I think SABs, both current and past, will agree that it's frustrating to have only a year to get everything done, and it makes it hard to make things stick. So I think what I would see as a successful year is actually making changes which help either stick or establish foundations of things that will stick in the past. And I think that my experience and background of doing so in the past would kind of help towards that.
Thank you all for the answers. For the next question, I'm going to go to the audience to see if we've got any audience questions. Anyone like to ask the activities officer candidates a question? Oh, we got one. I'll come to you, don't worry.
Hello, everybody. Do you have any plans to sort out the activities cupboard, which as of last week was half underwater? So do you have any plans to fix that?
I'll start with you, Harris, since you've got your hand up.
I absolutely do. It's something I've actually already been working on for like the last 8 years I've been here. It's probably the first thing I'm going to do when I get into, if I get into office. I've already made improvements to the activities cupboard, obviously not fix all the problems, but I, physically actually helped move things down from a small room to a bigger room, which helped some of the issues. Issues are still prevalent. I have a plan that I've been working on for like the last few years to deal with it. So if there's nothing else I do, and there will be, it'll be solving the storage issue. That's kind of one of the things I'm very much aware of. I might even solve it before then, because it's always something I'm doing as it is.
Would anybody else like to answer that one? You don't have to. You don't.
Yeah, obviously the flooding that recently happened was not great. I know current activities officer Harris has plans to kind of have it all taken out and all the societies to sort getting their stuff and to actually see what's needed and what's just no longer needed anymore, and to have the designated spaces. And I think, again, getting feedback from the current societies on what their spacing needs, and then to just make sure that's trickled down into future activities officers and committees.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, so fortunately I don't use the storage room for my society. I keep them in my house, so I wasn't aware of the flooding. That sounds not great. I think this issue comes around every year, I think. So I think, as Kiara said, really about involving as many societies as possible in discussion, finding out what people need and who gets what space.
Perfect. Thank you. So then my next question is along a similar vein. So after the impact of COVID, some society committees struggle to hit the ground running this year. How will you ensure there is a smooth handover process?
Yeah, so one of my policies is a compulsory and comprehensive handover procedure. I think that, along with better finance and admin training, because I know I took over a committee this year with little experience and I didn't know what on earth to do. My society really struggled to get off the ground. I think I have the policies that would give that extra support so societies know where to start, know who to ask for things, and can hit the ground running.
Anyone else like to answer?
I definitely think recovering from COVID is kind of one of the major things that need to be addressed next year. We're so much in early stages of recovery, and it hits societies hard, especially the smaller ones. I've run societies that have had to struggle recovering this year. So it's definitely something I've already been dealing with this year. It's something I'm keen to kind of address next year. And I've got a lot of experience at kind of helping societies, both small and large, recover from being hit by several things, not even pre-COVID. So yeah, it's just generally, I've got to support them. It needs to be tailor-made. I need to ask them what they need. Not all societies have the same issues, but I definitely think I'm the best place to do so.
So I completely agree. I think that because this year a lot of people were in committees that had never been in societies before, it was quite difficult to have that comprehensive training. So one of my ideas is, because everyone's already on Canvas, is to make kind of a Canvas thing and have like the treasurers have access to their finance, secretaries, all their kind of duties, as well as mental health and safety and risk assessments and all those kind of things. But yeah, it's just to be more thorough, I think, because a lot of people haven't been on committees or societies before this year.
Perfect, thank you all. I'm going to go last chance for an audience question. Getting my steps in today.
What is one activity that you're excited about putting on?
Who wants to go first?
So as an international student, one activity that I'm really excited to do is maybe do an international society club collaboration week before the proper freshers fair, just because I think international students do get here a lot earlier, and with COVID that has also been extended a bit, and when not that many students are up in the tune, then it's a nice way for them to meet and see what they have and what could really help them settle in a bit more.
So one thing I would be really excited to do is a revamp of the Go Volunteer Fair. I think we are really lacking in allowing our societies that focus on charity and social issues getting involved there. I think they often get glossed over in the Freshers' Fair. So that opportunity for extra members and more exposure would really help in boosting membership and just making students more aware of the societies that do try and make a difference.
I'm going to cheat my answer here a bit. I think I'd run something which is a bit more recursive and continuous, because I think what helps engagement is small events, but continuous events that run throughout the year that keeps showcasing different activities. And that's something I think I'd be keen to do.
So our final question for the activities officers was a pre-submitted question, and it's for you, Harris. So it says, Harris, while I'm certainly swayed by your extensive experience, I'm wondering if you have any ideas and proposals for introducing new things to NUSU. I understand your platform is based on your experience and knowledge of the inner workings of NUSU, but I was wondering what new things that you would like to improve.
I always have new things to introduce in NUSU, and I'm constantly doing it. Manifesto mentions 3 ideas, and one of them is kind of supporting liberation representation societies a bit more, giving a bit more security, because I know a lot of them, especially going back to COVID dance, have struggled with that. But I think the reason why I focus less on pledges and more my experience is whatever I want to do now, whatever I think is important now, might not be important in a couple of months' time. And it's important for me to actually listen to what the issues are, which, could be completely different, rather than focusing on what I think right now is important. And that's why my manifesto focuses on my ability to be kind of versatile. And that's kind of what I think is more important. If I get anything else done, then I'll focus on what I want. But that's not the issue here, I think.
Thank you all for answering those questions. Would everyone like to give them a big round of applause?
So next up, it is the 3 candidates for Athletic Union Officer. They are Hannah Danks, Jack Locomotive Train, and Teddy Weinberger. If you'd like to come up to the stage. So the Athletic Union Officer acts as the lead coordinator of all Athletic Union sports clubs. They prioritise the AU budget, including grants, as well as manage the development and direction of Team Newcastle, striving to make it as inclusive, accessible, and as united as possible. So one by one, if you can give your opening statements, you've got 40 seconds for those. Teddy, if you'd like to go first.
Hi, my name is Teddy. I really want to inspire Newcastle to live a healthy lifestyle, and I think putting me as the athletic union's officer is the best way to do that. Voting's open, so ready, steady, Teddy, go vote.
Hannah.
Hiya, I'm Hannah Danks. I'm a third-year geography student. I'm president of the Newcastle Wildcats and an AU exec committee member, so I have plenty of experience behind me. My main manifesto points are welfare, qualifications, and expanding Team Newcastle. So go vote Danks for AU.
And Jack.
Hi guys, my name's Jack Locomotive Train. I'm running for AU Officer. Obviously, I've got a lot going on, all that's on my manifesto and on my Instagram pages. Main sort of overview now is I want to get a training pathway for all committee members, getting the recognised qualifications you guys deserve. And I also want to make a sports community, meaning that all sports are interconnected more and working with each other an awful lot more as well. JT for AU!
So our first question was actually one that wasn't asked on the debates on Thursday. Dance Club has 291 members and is one of the largest clubs in the AU. How do you plan to increase representation of non-Buck sports to ensure they gain the same recognition as Buck sports? Teddy.
What was the club that you mentioned?
Dance Club.
Oh,
Dance.
Sorry. Oh, that's actually a really great question for me. At my undergrad, I was actually the president of the breakdancing club. I can still almost half do a backflip, and I think dance is one of those sports that promotes itself, right? Like, really, you can increase participation in those non-AU sports by creating collaborations with the AU sports. Get dance to come down to a football game, a rugby game, a volleyball game. We want you guys there. We want you guys to show your talents and show your stuff. So, if elected, I will make sure that all the non-AU clubs have a place in sports and have a place in Newcastle culture.
So I'm also part of a non-Buck sport, and I agree that it is difficult sometimes to feel underrepresented. I think it's super important to bring up all their, celebrate all their achievements through social media roundups and generally through the AU community. Also putting on loads of showcases, preferably in Newcastle, so that people can go and attend them, and kind of publicising that further will help to bring more attention and more funding to their club. So.
So first off, Dance Club, I have already reached out to you guys because I did see your message on the YouTube comments last weekend. So, and also congratulations for this weekend in Manchester. I know you did absolutely amazing. To answer your question, obviously Bucks and non-Bucks have been a long sort of historic battle, and neither is better than each other, and it really is the two sides of it. This is something I completely want to break down and merge the sports community. Obviously Bucks are still there to represent it, but we need to be publicising our non-Buck sports a lot as well. Equally, guys, if there's anything specific you guys want to talk about, drop me a message and we can have a chat about it. But in terms of Bucks versus non-Bucks, let's break it down. It doesn't exist anymore. It's still existing at the moment, I'm sorry, but let's break it down. Let's get it so it's not important anymore. And just, guys, you're going for your sport. We're all athletes. Let's keep our sport going.
Does anyone have a question in the audience for the Athletic Union Officer candidates? Nope. Okay, that's great because I can go on to my next one. In 2022, we expect our clubs and all aspects of sporting life to be warm, welcoming, and inclusive to all our students. How will you ensure that trans students who wish to be active in sport are able to do so and feel included? Sorry, I should say. Hannah.
So this is actually another issue we've had in our club this year with the first trans student in our club that's come out. And we've gone through a lot of support systems with the uni that just currently aren't in place. So it's a matter of creating these support systems, especially for gender, like single gender sports, knowing where they can compete, where it goes against league rules, and kind of debating that with the leagues so that they feel like safe and included. Also running campaigns through the year and also just making it generally more inclusive, regardless of how anyone identifies or
their sexuality is really important. We actually ran an LGBTQIA plus scrim last night, raising over 150 quid for a charity that helps that. So yeah, definitely more things like that.
Jack.
So obviously there's a couple of different parts to that. It's making sure the trans student feels supported in the club environment they're in, and we can do that through more training and also through the qualification system I've already mentioned. Equally, it's making sure that that person can compete in the league that they feel able to, if they want to compete at all. Obviously, there's absolutely two sides of this, in making them feel welcome in the club and then getting them welcome into that sport and that league as well. Obviously, it is individual support mechanisms. From my background as youth work, I'm very aware that all sort of issues related to trans and sort of the bigger connotations as well mean that we need to do an individual support plan for that person. It needs to be a bespoke support plan, and then we can help them that way.
And Teddy.
So this is an issue I grapple with a lot. I have a sibling who identifies as gender non-binary, and they compete in gymnastics, and I see the ways that they struggle with that identity in sport. And I think that the answer to that question is really it's not a one person job. The student union athletic union officer can't do it alone. I'd have to work closely with the welfare and equality officer and other sabbatical officers to find a way to make sure that they're represented in the right way. And I think one thing that I can do personally as the athletic union officer is appoint more trans and gender, global majority people to the student union and just get them more representation.
Stop you there. Nice one. Committee training is a huge part of the job early on in the academic year. It currently features specific training for all members of their executive committees, as well as dangerous behaviours training and EDI training. What is your approach to committee training, and how would you ensure that the right messages are conveyed but people are not put off running for committee positions by how much training they have to do? Jack.
So obviously a big part of my manifesto is introduce a training pathway for all committee members. This makes sure that they are feeling appreciated for all the amazing work they do, but also make sure they are given up-to-date training. The way I want to achieve this without spending too much money is to upskill in-house NUSU staff to be instructors for individual qualifications. For example, we can give a welfare officer for mental health first aid training and give them the actual qualification they deserve as well. This means they feel appreciated, and this also means that you're not going to be put off because you're actually receiving a qualification for your CV as well.
Hannah.
So obviously handovers generally start to happen in around June, but generally training for committees doesn't start till like September, October, which is a busy time of year for most people starting uni. So I think that it could definitely be done in more bite-sized pieces through the summer, even if it's online, which actually makes it more accessible, to then allow it to kind of settle in slower, but it means that you can go into more detail rather than overwhelming people with a lot of committee training. Also extending certain positions such as welfare out to like anyone with a position of responsibility, so like coaches, any committee member at a basic level means that it takes less pressure off one person.
And Teddy.
Yeah, I really like the other two candidates' answers on this one. I think that trickle down method that Hannah talked about, which is making sure that the coaches have that committee training and then having other trainings for the other members is really important. I really think we can increase trainings and make sure that everyone's properly covered.
And finally, we've got a pre-submitted one for Hannah. You talk about wanting to be able to subsidize coaching courses for students. Where would this money come from? And if you are asking for more money from the university, how would you go about doing this?
Yeah, so I actually had a conversation with Chris Drummond about this the other week, about how feasible it would be. And he basically explained that as long as there was some return for the uni, then there is budget for it. Obviously, to an extent, some of it might have to come out of club funds, but if the uni itself can subsidize that, then that makes it a lot easier and more accessible. Basically, the return policy was kind of like, if people are going to do the coaching course and it takes about 6 months and then they leave 6 months later, then it doesn't really work because it doesn't benefit the uni for a long-standing time. But if we can introduce alumni and external students as facilitators, as coaches, and things, then that could work as well.
Great stuff. Can we have a round of applause for our Athletic Union Officer candidates?
So the next category is the Chair of Student Council. They are responsible for chairing the 6 meetings of the NUSU Student Council during the next academic year. The candidates for this role are Afia Ballard-Bedouin and Zhao Li. I don't know if any of the candidates here, are they able to have been here today? I'm going to presume no. If they have campaign pages, you're welcome to message them if you have any further questions. So the next category is one of our Liberation Officer roles, which is the Disability Officer. The Disability Officer is the voice and representative for students with disabilities. The candidates for this role are Abby Peck and Lauren Gilbert. If you'd like to come up to the stage now, please. Hi, if you'd both like to take it in turns to give your 30-second opening statements about why students should vote for you.
Hi, I'm Lauren. My pronouns are she and they. I'm an autistic student with plenty of other difficulties thrown in there. Essentially, since being diagnosed as autistic, I've experienced firsthand the ableism that still exists within the education system and society as a whole. Quite frankly, it's unacceptable. We shouldn't have to fight tooth and nail for basic support, and support needs to be more widely available, and it needs to be more widely advertised so that people actually know that it's there. So if I'm voted in as Disability Officer, I want to work towards making sure that the support is recognised so that even though the support is there, we can't actually access it, it's not going to waste. So, thank you.
Hi, Abby, pronouns she, her. I've been diagnosed as deaf ever since I was a kid. So basically through all forms of education, I've unfortunately been witness to the ableism that is just constantly there. So I think in university where everyone just needs equality as desperately as they can to just get that dissertation and get out of here, we need to make sure that both students and the faculty are just so aware of anything that they could do. I think disability provisions need to be standard, not an afterthought. Disabled students bring in so much extra funding to this university every year, and I don't think that we should be treated as an afterthought. We should have all those provisions immediately accessible for all disabilities out there through SSPs, through extra support in societies, everything.
Thanks very much. So my first question is for both of you. What to you is the biggest obstacle facing disabled students on campus at the moment?
To be honest, I would say the biggest obstacle is lecturers themselves. I'd say that quite often we're told that we can go to teaching staff to kind of ask for support, but then we're given student support plans that are meant to support us, and lecturers don't even read them. So if I want to go and email someone and ask for support with exams or whatever, I've had lecturers come back to me and say that they don't want to help me unless it's specifically detailed in my student support plan. And then when I've come back to them and done that, they don't want to support me anyway, and it's just been a huge waste of time. So to be honest, student support plans, they're meant to be there to assist us, but they don't actually have any function when people aren't going to read them. Another thing is do I have to stop? Okay. Oh, okay. Another thing is the PET committee. I think they're way too invasive, and also I think they need a bit more well-being training. They're not very considerate when it comes to providing evidence about issues.
Thanks very much. Abby?
I just want to say to Lauren, I completely agree with you with the lecturers and the SSPs. It feels like we go through so much effort to get our student support plans in place, so many video calls, emails back and forth, and then we still have to go up to lecturers each and every time and go, this is why I can't do it. And it really drags you down when every time you talk to someone, you just got to say what you can't do. So yeah, I definitely think that SSPs are like a massive obstacle. I think additionally, welfare within societies, although welfare officers are well trained, I don't think they're quite trained enough to make accessibility standard. We do have sports that are designated for disabled people, such as like wheelchair basketball, which I think is fantastic. But I think in societies where disability isn't necessarily at the forefront, we need to push it there.
Thank you both so much. I'm going to go to the floor to see if anyone has any questions for our Disability Officer candidates. Good to take that as a no. This one again is for both of you. What would be a quick win for you and immediately impact the lives of disabled students at Newcastle if you were voted in?
So I think immediately improving the wellbeing services available. Most of the things that are a quick fix are just things like making sure people know who to email when they need support. At the minute, just for me, feeling like I need to reach out to someone at student wellbeing, I feel like I have to go digging for it on the website. I have to email with tutors, other people to even get there, and it's just a complete pain. Most things like that to implement are quick and easy. Literally all you have to do is send out regular emails so that people feel like they're actually cared for. Just really quick fixes like that can make such a big difference. And again, they're just easy to implement, not even cost worthy either.
Perfect. Abby, would you like to add?
I think a quick win for me would it be to have the disability officer and the welfare officer work more closely with the Disability and Neurodivergency Society. I think it's such an excellent idea to have an inclusive space for disabled and neurodivergent people, but I didn't even know it existed until 2 weeks ago when I started campaigning. So I just think, you know, when you first sign up to the uni, you get all this information about like where to go, what to do. I think you need to make sure that the society is there so students have support from students, not just the faculty, which is kind of failing at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you both. So finally, the last question is, how will you balance your studies and giving yourself time to complete all of your assignments while also representing students? And I'm going to let Abby answer first for this one.
Needed some time to think about that, but I'll roll with it. No, it's fine. I think in third year, a lot of my work actually revolved around, not quite disability, but like minorities. My dissertation is going to be about disability. So I think it will actually feed quite well in. I like to think that because it's part of what I go through, I'm going to have more of a motivation to make sure that things are going right for me and for every other student involved. And I have a lot of support from my housemates, some of which have disabilities themselves. So I like to think that with that support, I'm going to be able to balance it quite well and provide a good experience for everyone in university.
So for me, running for disability officer isn't so much like an opportunity to speak over disabled students. It's to be like a form of activism. I already run an Instagram account that is kind of one of my biggest hobbies. Where I'm trying to spread more awareness around hidden disabilities, the Sunflower Scheme and things like that, how it could be more accessible. For me as well, being autistic, when I have a special interest, that is all I will focus on. So for me at the minute, I'm in kind of a phase of I would just focus on this, and it's something I'm so interested in. So I think the passion from really wanting to do this is something that will carry me through. It's also something that means that it'll get me more on campus more. So not only does it benefit other people, it means that I actually have a reason to get out the house and put my energy into something good. And that'll be a really good change for me, not just for other students as well.
Thank you both so much. Can everyone give them a massive round of applause?
Next up, we've got the student media officers candidates. The role of student media officer is to oversee all strands of student media, including the Courier, NUTV, and Newcastle Student Radio, NSR. And the candidates are Hattie Metcalf and Meg Howe. If you'd like to come up to the stage, please. So just as everyone else, you'll have 40 seconds to give your elevator speech opening statement. And Hattie, if you'd like to go first, please.
Hi everyone, my name's Hattie. I'm a third year English literature student and I'm running to be the next student media officer to ensure student media is kept current, creative and collaborative. My three key aims for this are to introduce a climate sub-editor, to work with sports societies to ensure fixtures are more widely broadcast, and create regular feedback forms to ensure welfare is made a priority next year. Thank you.
Meg.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Meg, obviously running for Student Media Officer. My campaign and manifesto is centered around three key themes. These are accessibility, inclusivity, and approachability. And I want every single student to get the most out of their experience with student media. So if that is something that you would like, vote now and vote how.
So the first question we've got is for both of you. Both of you talk about, candidates across many positions talk about fostering positive relationships with clubs and societies. But how do you actually plan on making this a reality? We're looking for something specific, not a vague, sweeping statement. Meg, you go first.
Thank you. Yes, so one key point on my manifesto is the student media calendar. And this kind of came from when societies were reaching out to us to kind of do featured pieces in the Courier. So this for me would be a physical calendar that is put onto page 2 of the Courier, updated regularly on our website and verbally broadcasted on NSR's flagship shows. And obviously this would kind of just be there to kind of highlight and promote all of the events that are kind of going on around campus for students to get involved in.
Hattie?
So working with clubs is something I talked a lot about in debates, and I would really like to give them the same sort of treatment that we give Fight Night, with pre and post match analysis through the Courier, live broadcasting on both NSR and NUTV. And I'm like to do that at least twice a year. I say twice. I'm not just going to do it twice and then leave. I want to do it at least twice a year as a feasible goal.
Do we have a question from the audience? Anyone want to quiz the student media officer candidates? George, our current student media officer.
Hello, I've got a question for Hattie. Hattie, we already have about 15 sections of editorial content in the paper. You mentioned having creative writing in the paper, and you mentioned Poem Box alongside that. Where would this live in the paper?
Yep. So what I would quite like to do with that is to swap Poem Box and creative writing out weekly. So 1 week it's Poem Box, 1 week it's creative writing. I think it's a really good idea to get not only just creative writing and English societies involved, I come from an English background, but also to just give writers a new chance, a new challenge, write a story in 250 words. How easy is that? Not very easy at all. Give them a go to do it. So that's how that would work.
Our next question is actually pre-submitted for you, Meg. It says, Meg, I'm really intrigued by your offering of in-house media training, but Hattie Metcalf's write-in policy and proposal for a short story section have also grabbed me. What are your thoughts on these policies?
Yeah, thank you. I know exactly who this question is from. I bumped into them in the SU earlier on in the week. I think that Hattie's writing policy and kind of a chance for people to socialize is a fantastic idea, but something that I want to offer with the interactive workshops is the chance for people to write something that is publishable within this time. And so this would be an extension of kind of what we offer already from our student media afternoons, and it would give writers the chance to kind of gain valuable feedback, which is something that I really don't think is done as often as could be from our sub-editors.
I've also been told here to ask if Hattie wanted to comment on Meg's in-house training policies after Meg's answer.
So I guess with the in-house training policies, if it is just about writing, but this is more of a question for Meg, if it's just about writing a publishable article in an hour, I guess that is something we're qualified to do because we do that. But if you're extending that outside training and going on to talk about further themes like your sports correspondence policy, what sort of qualifications do you have that you think might allow you to do that and to teach those students?
Go on then.
Yeah, so this was kind of touched in a little bit in the debate last week. I think that obviously there are some things that I'm qualified to do, and there would be some things that my senior team would be qualified to do, but there are also things that we would need to bring people in from outside, just as we do with our student media afternoons. And so that would require us reaching out to other people and asking them very, very nicely in a nice smiley face email, would you please come in and do these workshops for us?
And finally, for both of you, you both talk about regular media training opportunities in your manifesto, but those involved in student media, particularly the Courier, already receive a large amount of training on the software that's used. And for a team that's made up of volunteers, how will you ensure that students won't be put off by more training hours? Hattie.
So training for me, I actually don't know how much I mentioned in my manifesto, but what I did mention was offering support from Kingsgate and the Career Service and working with them to ensure students know what skills they are gaining through student media. I think a lot of people are put off by student media because they don't actually want to be journalists, but there's so many skills you can learn from just getting involved, and working with them, having them as optional workshops is the kind of training I would like to provide.
Meg.
Yeah, so I totally agree with Hattie in that, you don't just have to want to be a journalist to kind of learn these skills, because they can transfer to any other creative industry. And so something that I want to do is offer this software training not just to our editorial team, because sometimes people miss out on these valuable skills just because they haven't been picked for our team. And that's something that I would really like to work on, making this as inclusive as possible.
Great stuff. Give it up for our student media officer candidates. And a reminder, voting has opened. It opened 55 minutes ago. Head over to the Student Union website and cast your vote in all of the positions we've got, whether it's the NUS referendum, sabbatical officers, or liberation officers as well. Plenty of voting to be done.
So the next category is obviously my favourite, the education officer. So the candidates for this category are Mac Marshall and Tom Wellesley. So the education officer acts as the principal lead for academic representation within the sabbatical officer team. They have a strong relationship with faculty bodies and professional service departments within the university. So can both candidates come up to the stage, please? I'm also just going to ask politely, I know people want to chat, but just it's quite difficult for candidates to hear what we're saying if there's a lot of noise in the background, so if people could keep it to a minimum, please. Thank you. So if you'd both like to take it in turns to go up and give you your 30-second elevator speech. If Tom, you'd like to go first? Just on my list first.
Yeah, hello. So my name's Tom, and I'm standing to be your next education officer. With 3 years worth of student representation experience under my belt, including 1 year as the undergrad school rep for the School of Arts and Cultures, I want to make your education as fair, inclusive and accountable as possible. So make sure you vote Tom for Ed to turn your education around.
Hiya, I'm Mac. I'm going to be your next education officer. I've been focused on this campaign about creating a personal and understanding approach to education. So this means mitigating disruption, increasing access to your wellbeing services, career support, assessment reform. Let's go to online exams where we can, make PECs fit for purpose. It's your education and I'm going to work hard for it.
Thank you both. So my first question is for both of you. Both of you spoke extensively in the debates last week about your experience as student reps. But beyond this, the education officer role goes a lot beyond what the student rep role would do. Beyond this, why do you think you would be a good fit for the role? Tom, no. Mac, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think specifically about this role, you have to care and you have to be friendly and approachable, because people are going to come up to you all the time with their stresses about their education, because that's why we're here. We're here for the degree, and that's so stressful in itself. So I want to prioritize being that friendly, happy face that someone could stop me outside the union and just say, oh, this hasn't been working well in this module. What can you do about it? And I'll do everything in my power to do so, because I know how stressful those little things are when it comes to studying at Newcastle.
Yes, of course, the student rep system is one thing, but of course the education officer does a lot of work within uni more generally, apart from that. And I have been quite involved heavily with the student union outside of that. I've been on 3 society committees. I'm currently the secretary of Karaoke Society. I actually founded that a couple of years ago. And I've also been very heavily involved with A Cappella Society. So it's things like that give me those soft skills like teamwork and communication, and importantly, empathy. I really want to ensure that students are able to reach out to me with any concerns they have. I also have an invisible disability myself. As Lauren was saying earlier, I have quite a lot of experience dealing with the Student Wellbeing Service. And so I think someone like that, with those experiences, will be able to empathise with students and get the support they need.
Thank you both. So I'm just going to go to the floor to see if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask. This big wall, I can't see a thing.
Hello, education officers. So during the debates, both of you briefly mentioned that the government policies by the Home Office were out of your control, so therefore you weren't going to try to do anything about them even when they were harmful to students. So why do you think that you deserve a paid position when you aren't willing to advocate against the government? That's all.
I'm just going to preface that by saying that the Home Office policy is actually potentially going down to be 50% in attendance. And I don't think either of them meant last week that they wouldn't advocate. It's just a very difficult thing to change a government law. So yeah, I'm going to let you both answer, but I just want to preface it by saying that because I know it's an issue that I've dealt with too this year. Thanks. Who wants to go first? I'll let you pick.
Yeah, totally agree with what Liv just said. If I will stand outside Parliament if you would like me to, because I agree entirely. But the main thing about this is that if there's nothing I can do with the government, I'll make sure that those emails about your attendance aren't angry and stressful, that you've got the support that you need with for international students, and make sure that that experience isn't any different to a home student.
I was going to say that, but I'm not allowed.
Yeah, just to echo what Livia and Mac were both saying, I would be very happy to collaborate with other students' unions to try and make this policy a bit less aggressive and a bit more compassionate. I also think that I agree with Mac about the issue of angry attendance emails. I think we do need to see a more understanding approach to that sort of thing. And I also want to see better support for students who have to miss teaching sessions. I think it's not good enough that at the moment you can miss a teaching session and have almost no support whatsoever to catch up. So that's something I'd really like to improve on. But with regards to the Home Office requirement, that's definitely something I'd like to work towards improving.
Thank you both. Again, this one is for both of you. What is your approach going to be to improve access to wellbeing and student support services to ensure that students receive the support that they need and is actually implemented? Tom, would you like to go first? I'm just going to go in reverse.
Yeah, so I think the problem with the student wellbeing support that we get here at the moment is that it's a bit patchy. I think the first issue is there are some services, for example, mental health therapy services, the waiting lists are far, far too long, so I'd like to work with the Welfare and Equality Office to try and shorten those. I think the other thing is as well, and Lauren touched on this, and I think Abby did as well, is the issue of student support plans. Quite a few students have student support plans, but a lot of lecturers do not read them or understand them. And so something I'd like to work towards is a system where every lecturer or teaching member of staff reads and understands those student support plans to ensure that any adjustments in those are implemented properly. And I'd also like to see better awareness amongst lecturers of things, conditions that they might not even know about.
I have to stop you there, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mac, would you like to answer?
I spoke a lot about well-being in my manifesto because someone with OCD and anxiety is something that I'm so passionate about. And what I've been doing within School of Drug Policy and Sociology is kind of reforming the welfare's referral system. So I'd kind of advocate for well-being advisors across all schools so that there is I had to wait 90 days before I got therapy this year. And in that time, I was able to speak to my wellbeing advisor on little drop-in 20-minute vent sessions, which kind of mediated that stress in between. So making sure that is across all schools, everybody has equal access to wellbeing support when you're waiting that 90 days. Because when you need that help, you need it then. You need help when you're in crisis mode. You can't wait 90 days. And also reforming the culture among staff so that you can say, I'm having a mental health day, or I'm having a bad day, and they understand that.
Perfect, just on time. I think we had one final question from the floor. Sorry, I can't see because of this post. Who was it? Hi.
Hi, I've got like two questions. So one of them would be that a lot of Muslim students try to avoid going to university because of the student loan and the fact that interest is prohibited. I personally went through this issue and I contacted the university, and thankfully they uploaded resources after I asked them to. But is there any way that you could petition to protest to the government because they created a system to help Muslim students, but this was never implemented. Is there any way that you could represent Newcastle University and protest to the government to kind of implement this, or like implement a system within the university to help students overcome this barrier? And my second question is, there's been a lot of strike action, and which is I totally support, but a lot of students with mental health issues and anxiety like myself have felt quite unsupported by the university and the lecturers, and we feel like we're just kind of thrown into it, and in terms of assignments we don't really know the content very well, and the lecturers kind of expect you to do the work. Would there be extra support for students who have mental health issues or feeling very stressed?
I'm going to ask you to answer the first question each and then answer the second one So is anyone that'd like to go first? Yeah? Sure.
Yes, so in response to the question on interest rates, I agree. I can see why it would be a particular problem, and I think it's one of those things where it requires a national approach. Obviously, wouldn't just be within the gift of Newcastle to try and affect that change, but of course, I would be more than willing to collaborate with other students' unions across the country to try and advocate for a more fairer system and a system that recognises specific students' needs. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that.
I just want to echo that whether we're with NUS or not, working with other student unions to kind of promote that, to get it down into proper legislation, absolutely important. And specifically, making sure that Newcastle has some clear guidance. And so when you got those resources, it shouldn't be that hard for you to find them. It should be far more accessible. It should be clear on websites and such. And that there's actual designated people you can go to and speak about that and make it properly accessible.
Perfect. Thank you both. Unfortunately, we haven't. Oh, am I allowed to accept? Would you like to answer the second part now? Go in the same order. Tom, do you want to go?
Yeah. So, of course, the strikes have been very, very disruptive, and they've had a particular impact on students with certain conditions, including mental health conditions. Something I would like to see is an assurance that schools will not be testing students on content that wasn't covered and that was disrupted because of the strikes. I'd also like to see consideration given at Board of Examiners to models where this is affected. And I'd also like to see more encouragement of students who have been particularly affected due to particular mental health conditions or medical conditions to apply for discretion through PEC. You're able to apply to Board of Examiners discretion through the PEC system to ensure that your school's Board of Examiners give you special consideration if you've been particularly impacted because of a medical condition. So I'd like to see more promotion of that. Thank you.
Matt, would you like to answer?
I feel we've all really struggled with strikes this time, especially if you're a third-year student. It's been a lot. And especially it's really draining on your mental health when you've only had, 1-2 weeks of teaching and then you're thrown in and it's all of a sudden on you. So making sure that anything that's not covered by not covered because of strikes isn't assessed upon, but also even if it wasn't covered and it's not assessed upon, making sure that that's understanding that approach within when it comes to final assessment at Board of Examiners, that these things weren't covered properly. You didn't get the proper full experience, and making sure that almost like you have your PECs and making sure PECs are fit for purpose during this time with mental health problems, but also that there's almost a PEC form for disruption for which there was last year with industrial action forms and stuff, so you can register that you were affected in different modules and how you were affected, and then that's taken into proper consideration.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. Would everyone like to give them a big round of applause?
We're fairly rattling through them. We're shifting over to one of the liberation officers, the International Students Officer. The International Students Officer will become the representative for all of our international students here at Newcastle University. We've got two candidates for this, Anisha Arya and Tarushi Bahuguna, if they would like to come up to the stage. So sadly, just one here today, but do head over to the NUSU website to read both of the manifestos, their ideas, and vote on who you would like to be your International Students Officer. So just like everyone else, you've got 40 seconds for your opening statement, so kick it away.
Okay, I'm too short for this, but my name's Anisha. Last month, I conducted a university-wide survey among international students, and you'll be surprised to know how different university is for them. And it shouldn't be. So many people reached out to me after the survey, and that's when I decided to run. And therefore, if elected, my focus this year will be community integration, cultural exchange programs, society for more nationalities, societies like the Russian Society, which still doesn't exist, support groups, and weekly checkup sessions. And I just want to make university a better experience for everyone, like it should be. Thank you.
All right, so the first question that we've got for you is, what do you think is the biggest challenge that is faced by international students at the moment?
I think at the moment, and I think every time, it's just homesickness. It's just like this feeling of being different, which shouldn't be because it's an international university. And personally, for me, it's been stepping out of my comfort zone and, just talking to people. And I just want to make sure that everyone gets their say, and I want to be there for them. I just want them to know there's someone, because I know we have support, like we have mental health support, but I want them to know that there's someone who understands beyond the required.
Great stuff. The second question. This year, Harris, our activities officer, has been hosting forums with the International Society. Is this something you wish to continue and get involved with? And if so, how would you grow the events next year?
100%. Like, I would love that. But I feel like I want to do more than that. As far as forums are concerned, I don't think most international students are aware of them. I wasn't. In fact, I wasn't even aware of this position. And I don't want this to be the case this year. I want people to know that there are positions and there are people they can reach out to.
Does anyone in the audience have a question for Anisha about being the International Students Officer? Oh.
Thank you. My question was just to follow up on the one that you just answered. I'd like to know how you're going to engage students to come along to things like the forum, and also talking about you want to do other things, sort of a little bit more specifically what you're going to do, because we do struggle with engagement. Especially at the moment, students are so fatigued. So it'd be great to hear some of your ideas on that.
I think for international students, they know there is support, but for them to actually go out and like get it, it's really different. So I think you have to just be there for it. You just have to like continuously send them emails, weekly checkup sessions. And I know for a fact that even if they see it like once and twice and they're like, you know what, I am struggling, but I'm not going to reach out. But if they see it like every single week, they'll know that there is someone for them. And then at one point they will reach out and they will come up with more suggestions, because I'm telling you, like they take a backseat when they think that no one's there for them. Like a monthly checkup session or like once in 2 months is not enough. I think it should be weekly, should be consistent.
Great stuff. Abby, you actually asked the question that was on my piece of paper. So that will conclude our questions for Anisha and for the International Students Officer. So a round of applause for Anisha and Tarushi.
Thank you.
As I said at the beginning, sadly, Tarushi wasn't able to be here, so head over to the Students' Union website to read about her manifesto as well and cast your vote on all of the positions you can vote on this week.
Next up is our another Liberation Officer position, which is our LGBTQ plus officer. The LGBTQ plus officer will become responsible for representing the interests of LGBTQ plus students. The candidates for this role are George Wood. Would you like to come up, George? If you'd like to give you a 30-second elevator pitch.
Yeah. Hi everyone. So I'm George, and I'm running for a second term as the LGBT officer at Newcastle. I should say LGBTQ plus officer now, because we changed the name. I started my role as LGBT officer last year in September. I was elected at September Council, not as part of the main election, so I started a little bit later. And I haven't had as much time to push through some of the big kind of policies that I'd like to do. So I would really appreciate a second term as a second opportunity to push through some of those policies.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So my first question kind of continues on from that a little bit. So you were rerunning this year. What have your achievements been so far this year?
So far this year, I feel that I've participated in a lot of policy, points to do with LGBT people in Newcastle. Obviously, the main part of the role is to represent LGBT students here, and I feel like I've done that effectively. Some more specific points are that I'm currently actually in the process of organizing a LGBTQ plus sex education, both an event and a pack of resources that will hopefully be going onto the NUSU website. I participated a couple of weeks ago in a panel discussion about LGBTQ plus issues in education and how they apply to that, to the educational setting. And these are the sorts of things I want to continue doing if re-elected next year.
Perfect. Thank you. Have we got any questions from the floor for George? Oh, hello. I need to stop kicking that ball.
George, you mentioned your Let's Talk About Sex Baby campaign before. You said that you want to do this again more in your second term. Do you want to talk about that, please?
Yeah, so I think that one problem that LGBTQ plus students face, especially when they're maybe at the point of coming out when they're in higher education in university, is that they haven't been exposed, generally speaking, to some very comprehensive LGBTQ plus sex education. It's not really taught very well in schools, although it is getting better. And a lot of people turn up with no knowledge of what things like PrEP are and how to kind of effectively use protection and to practice safe sex in the LGBTQ plus community. So this is something that I want to make really, improve access to within the university, as I said, both by hosting events and by having online resources. And then I would also love to get some links with local sexual health services like New Croft to allow people to access, sexual health testing and services like PrEP within university without having to trek out to the actual clinics themselves.
Thank you very much. So our last question is, fast forward 12 months down the line, what achievements will you have had that will hopefully inspire multiple candidates to run for this position next year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would love to, I'd love to achieve lots of things, but honestly, just the main headline is to make the campus a more inclusive place for LGBTQ plus students. One thing I would really like to achieve is to give students the options to add their pronouns to their university lanyards. I know that the university are pushing out wearing your lanyards on campus at all times quite widely. So given that that's coming through, I think it makes sense to be able to add pronouns to your lanyard. So obviously, if you want to, not as a mandatory thing, just as another little thing for people to do. And of course, as I've already said, to push forward the kind of sex education and just to make the campus more generally inclusive for LGBT students.
Round of applause for George Woods. So we're sticking with our liberation officers, and next up is our marginalized gender officer. They will become responsible for ensuring that issues concerning gender equality and discrimination against marginalized genders are accurately represented. And similar to the previous role, we've got one candidate running for this position, and that is Yuri Fraser. So if they would like to come up to the stage. And you've got 40 seconds for your opening statement.
Hi there. So I'm Yuri and I'm running for Marginalized Genders. What that is, basically anyone who doesn't self-identify as a cisgender male, including intersex, trans, and cis women. A lot of the issues faced by marginalized genders at the university don't just extend to those of non-cisgender identities. It also extends to disabled cis women and disabled non-binary people, trans umbrella individuals in general. One major issue I've identified recently that I want to tackle mainly next year is support for menstruating students in the university. This building excluded. The university facilities for that are horrific. I will not cut corners on describing this. I went to the Robinson Library and you have to get staff assistants to go in an accessible toilet. And the men's in the majority of buildings don't have sanitary bins, and the majority of male students in the university don't even know what a sanitary bin is. So, I'm sorry, I kind of rambled on there, but yeah, so that's one major point that needs to be improved on, and if anyone has any other questions, my entire sort of manifesto is on my social media. Sorry.
You mentioned a couple there, but in a liberation officer role, it can be quite difficult to get a large number of things done throughout the year. So what's probably the main improvement that you would like to see the university step up and do?
Definitely that sort of inclusivity for non-cisgender, transgender, non-binary, agender, not only for physical support, menstruation, but as George previously said, for including pronouns on student ID, sorry, and just that general reaching out and having the option to tell people your gender identity without having to tell them directly.
Do we have any audience questions for the candidate for Marginalised Gender Officer?
Hey, Yuri. So if elected as Marginalised Genders Officer, what would be your kind of hit the ground running first thing to push through, first policy?
Definitely, my first policy is getting that support for the menstruating students. It is not difficult to get a sanitary bin and whack it in a toilet. You know, I don't understand why it hasn't been done yet with so much awareness over the past years of trans and non-binary students. It needs to be there. And that is my main focus. But sort of connected to that also, the student union provides free sanitary products. But sanitary products for those who don't want to be seen regularly accessing them, like reusable menstrual cups and things like that, is another thing that's so simple to tackle, but just needs someone to initiate it.
What motivated you to become a Liberation Officer, and why are you the best person for this role?
Initially, I actually didn't know about the role. I only looked at the roles out of curiosity, and when I saw it there, I thought, this role doesn't have the representation that it deserves. And it's representation that's very personal to me, being a trans individual. Also being feminine perceived, I fall under a lot of different subcategories of marginalized gender. And I felt that if we were going to have a repeat of last year where no one applied for the role and it had to be specifically re-elected, why not run myself and be that person that represents? Because if someone doesn't take the first step, it's not going to happen.
Great stuff. There we have it. Round of applause there for Yuri. And as we've said, voting is already open. Head over to the Student Union website to cast your vote, not just in the Marginalised Genders Officer position, but all the other liberation roles and the sabbatical positions as well.
Just a quick announcement. There's plenty of food over here, like Greg's food. Please come and help yourselves if you would like any. There's a lot left. So the next category is the Postgraduate Officer. As the Postgraduate Officer, your principal responsibility will be the main liaison between postgrads and the union and university. You will act as a representative for postgrad students on an institutional and national issues and will be involved in gaining feedback on the postgraduate student experience. The candidates for this role are Danica Limowan, Jack Short, and Peko Sue. If you'd like to come to the stage, please. Jack, if you'd like to start and would like to give your 30-second elevator pitch, please.
Hello, I'm Jack. I'm running to be the next postgraduate officer here at NUSU. I want to make the postgraduate community more connected, more integrated, and create an exclusive and inclusive postgraduate community at Newcastle.
Perfect, thank you. We're going to go straight in with the questions. So, postgrad students can often feel as though NUSU is only a place for undergraduate students or is aimed more at younger people. How would you make NUSU feel more like a place for postgrad students?
I think this is down to advertisement, really. As a postgraduate student this year and a former student at Newcastle, I've always seen Luthers and NUSU as a place to go. But I think if you are coming from a different establishment, you don't really know where the student union are. A lot of my peer body don't know what the student union's for, what it's about. So I think advertisement would be a key point. And also just host some postgrad events a year. You know, you could host a postgraduate drinks reception, you could host postgraduate meetings. Just that you know that this student union is for undergrads and postgrads as well.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to open the floor for any questions that you would like to ask Jack, Harry.
The question I wanted to ask was going to be primarily directed to the two candidates who sadly can't be here, but in the interest of scrutiny and also to give Jack a chance to comment on it, I'll ask it nonetheless. On a debate, I asked the question, what will the postgrad officers do to support disabled students? The other two candidates disappointingly floundered on an answer and didn't really give anything of any substance. Time has passed since then. Is there anything else
you want to comment on how to support disabled students?
I think I'd reiterate the statements I made at the debate. You know, one of the key things that disabled students need is accessibility and also their voices to be heard. So I'd go about doing feedback groups with disabled students. I've noticed as well that a lot of lectures and seminars I'm in where disabled students are, they aren't really accessible at the times. And so I think accessibility for postgrad students, whether that be lecture theatres, seminar rooms that are accessible, but also timetables that's accessible, that would be a manifesto point I'd tackle. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you very much. So the final question is that all of your manifestos mention employment. What are your specific ideas for improving postgraduate employment?
My specific ideas are twofold. So we've got on the one side, we're a research university, so we would want to produce academics at this university. So I would introduce, so you want to be an academic again and sort of show people how to go about wanting to do PhD because there isn't a lot of information about that. On the other side, I'd host postgraduate employment fairs. Master students usually expect a higher salary, a different type of role to enter at entry level. So I'd also host postgraduate catered employment fairs. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you very much. Can we give Jack a big round of applause? So we are down to our final two. Right, we are on to our next category, which is the Welfare and Equality Officer.
So as Welfare and Equality Officer, you will be an active member of any relevant union committees or groups, including Trustee Board, Students' Council, Operational Group and Officers Forum, as well as university bodies that are deemed appropriate, including Senate and Diversity Committee. We've got our candidates already on stage, and our candidates are Alina Ikram, Elspeth Wilson, Padmini Gokali, Will Rigby, and Yesevsri. And Will, you're already at the podium. Would you like to kick things off with your opening statement?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is William Rigby, and I'm running for the Welfare and Equality Officer. My manifesto is centered around empathy, respect, and accessibility to all students of Newcastle University. I have extensive experience in this role already. I am the Welfare and Equality Officer for the Classic Society, so I know all the ins and outs of what needs to be done within the university and what specific areas need to be targeted to ensure that all students get the welfare and equality that they deserve. It has been a passion of mine to improve the welfare experience for all students of Newcastle University for a very long time. And if chosen for this role, I will try my best at all stages of the campaign to do what is right for the university and the students. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Elspeth.
So hi everyone, my name's Elspeth. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a fourth year psychology student who has experience working in NHS management and want to take what I learned on my placement into the university to improve our culture and our community here. My three core goals are improving mental health, improving intersectionality, and making Newcastle a safer place to study and live. I believe I'm right for the role because I have both lived experience and work experience dealing with sexual assault at the uni, menopause, mental health, and neurodivergence. I will fight for everyone to get their needs met so we can thrive as a community and as individuals. Please vote for me, for Elspeth, as a change for the better. Thanks, everyone.
Great stuff. Just before we do the next one, worth noting that Alina can't be with us today, so head over to the Student Union website and you will see her manifesto there. Next up, we'll go to Padmini.
Greetings, everyone. I, as your Welfare and Equality Officer, would bring forward all your ideals and objectives of our NUSU family to the forefront, true to the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the world is my family. There would be, it would bring us together, it would enmesh us together, there would be communication, there would, let's open out, let's talk, let's not our differences pull us apart, would basically bring us together. Then I will be a loudspeaker. I will speak to you. I will be there. Let's make it memorable. Let's value our happiness. Let's value each other's happiness. And together, understand, interact, and evolve. Thank you so much. And please do vote.
And finally, Yesesvi.
Hello, I'm Yesesvi. I haven't really prepared anything for this, so I'm not sure what I want to say. But then I'll tell you why I chose to be a welfare officer. Well, I deeply care for people, and I wish everyone has the best university experience. It would mean the world to me if everyone felt listened to, if everyone felt like they're part of the community, everyone felt like they're
someone's there to care for them. I want to be that person who cares for them. I want to listen to everyone, actively listen and provide reforms and wherever needed, because everyone's individual, and I mean every individual is beautiful and unique, and everyone deserves the best experience and the most authentic self. So I want to ensure that. Thank you so much. Please vote for me.
So the first question we've got, throughout the pandemic and the subsequent transition period after, students with disabilities and students who are neurodivergent were among many marginalized groups disproportionately affected. Do you have any policies in mind to support these students? Elspeth.
Yeah, so I'm neurodivergent myself, and I only realized this during university because of the ways I struggled. So one thing I would really love to implement is low light hours at the library, because the fluorescent lighting can be so draining for people with sensory issues. I also really want to make sure that we're evaluating all our buildings for accessible entrances, wheelchair lifts, and also just making sure that SSPs are adhered to within the university culture, and also implement training for accessibility for societies, so that it's not a afterthought and people can consider hosting societies at accessible venues so that they're not excluded. Yeah.
Yasesvi.
Honestly, I have nothing to add. So, better.
Will.
Yes, getting in contact with experts on neurodivergency and disabilities is going to be extremely important. Setting up support groups for people who have been struggling with the transition period would be extremely vital, making sure everyone's voices are heard. And once a consensus has been formed, we can then start moving forward, taking efficient and effective action to ensure that students with disabilities and neurodivergency can thrive in a university setting.
And Padmini.
This question can be answered by we could have a lot of different welfare heads of different societies collaborate and come together. Plus, we could have maybe a student support fund which can bring together and support everyone as well. And we could there will be so many interpersonal workshops. We can understand the hows and whys of us, and understand that we are one in many and many in one.
Do we have any audience questions for the candidates for Welfare and Equality Officer?
Yeah, I've just got a question for all of the candidates, actually. So as Welfare and Equality Officer, you'll be working quite closely with all liberation officers, and hopefully with me included in that. So how would you ensure that you effectively work with liberation officers to achieve the best representation for everyone at the university?
Well, myself, I have worked on many teams before, not only the welfare officer position at the Classic Society, but I've also in secondary school, I was part of the Combined Cadet Force. I was sergeant. I've worked with teams. I know leadership roles. I know how to work within teams. I'm very passionate to get involved with liberation officers, activity officers, student media, all aspects of the university team, having group discussions, having checkup meetings once a week to check in on how progress is going, group chats, making sure that everyone works together. I'm very capable to do that.
Padmini.
So our post in itself requires everyone to come together. It is one of the basic underlinings of a post. Then we could highlight the fact that everyone looks, all of this care, everything looks individualistic, but it is not. It is a part of a community, and we should support every part of it. There will be community-based healing alternatives. There will be so many welfare and equality projects that will somehow cater to each and every one person and bring out something which is as individualistically applicable as well as to everyone. And that is how we increase our understanding of peace and harmony, and build about something which is based on stronger connections and understanding again.
Yasesvi.
Right, so sorry, can you please repeat the question again? I just forgot it. That's okay. Sorry, I just have a bad memory span.
Yeah, my question, in summary, how would you work effectively with liberation officers?
Cool. So I've been part of Mind the Gap for 2 years now, where I've had to actively listen to people and to make sure people have a safe space to express themselves. As to how I would work with people, or the other liberation officers, I believe I'd actively listen to people. I admit that I don't know I don't have all the answers, and I have so much to learn myself. So I'd actively ask everyone what they think about something, what's their opinion about how to carry out a certain task or how to help people. So I'd actively listen, have my feet on the ground, and practically hold meetings regularly and ask them what's the best we can do for people feeling better in general. I'd actively talk and communicate and listen, I guess. Most importantly, listen. That's what I'd do. Thank you.
Elspeth?
So I think if we need to take an intersectional approach, we need to have it from day one. So not just talking to the liberation officers when we think it's needed. It needs to be every single meeting where we're talking about our plans and having these regular meetings. Accessibility in all regards, in terms of LGBT, disability, everything, like it shouldn't be a final thought. It should be as we're starting the decisions. So I think weekly meetings, as Will said, group chats, but yeah, it needs to be from the beginning, and it shouldn't just be bringing in the LGBT officer and other liberation officers as a final thought to be like, hey, just checking this is fine. It needs to be from the beginning as a collaborative approach to make everything truly intersectional. That's what I have to say for that.
Has anyone got an audience question?
I do. So as Welfare and Equality Officer, you chair campaigns committee, and I'm curious as to what kind of campaigns you have in mind that you'd be looking to run next year. So maybe you could each give me a quick fire 3 ideas that you would be looking to run.
My first one I had in mind was trying to really push student voice. It's quite popular in the HASS school, but I don't believe it's extremely popular in other ones. So that'd be the first one I want to push. I'd like to continue the Black Lives Matter and Black History Month campaign. I think that's I've attended the different meetings for those, and I've really enjoyed those. And for a third one, part of my manifesto was organizing different community events, getting an idea and consensus about what students would like to see. So having that third option open to students getting an idea about what they'd like to see, I think would be quite community-driven approach. That's what I would like to do. Thank you.
So I'd love to do a sex positivity campaign and really remove the shame around sex and issues around sex at university. I think a lot of students come to university not really knowing a lot about these issues. So really just no shame, talk about it. Also, neurodivergence, disability and invisible illnesses are really forgotten about at the university. So I think a campaign exclusively for that would be really useful. And then also continue shining a light on the decolonizing the curriculum campaigns, because it's so important and so few students actually know what's going on. So just shining a light on that.
Padmini?
First of all, we would like to have complaints being heard. I'm pretty sure there was an article in last week's Courier as well. Complaints are really not getting through. There are students who are complaining, but there's not an effective support system. There's not an effective feedback system. So that has to be established. And we will make sure that we can give back and support back and do everything we can to ease their access and experience in this university as well. And we could have gender equality workshops. We will have something which will encourage startups, encourage coming together, encourage something which will break all man-made barriers and support each other equally.
And Yasesvi?
So someone was asking me a question about what my ideas were earlier. So I'm kind of just gonna say what I told them in short. So, as Elspeth said, I'd also work on neurodivergence and make sure neurodivergent people are more understood and educate people what exactly it is, because sometimes just that little bit of education and telling people what it is and what it feels like might just help and increase empathy. I'd also want to. Oh, I was gonna say something. No, brain fog. I'll come back later.
Our final question is all about decolonization, which is obviously a huge priority for the Students' Union at the moment. How would you decolonize our campus beyond and other than just the curriculum? Will?
Decolonizing our campus. I think having obvious and clear messages of unity and togetherness is extremely important. Having different plaques for important figures of Newcastle University that have helped bring equality to university, raising awareness for a Eurocentric view of education, trying to include that within the campus. Possibly having certain events going on throughout the month, where information booths, having different speakers come. I think that, and having that all being very public and very accessible to all students would be massively important. Thank you.
Padmini?
Decolonizing of campus really depends on all of us playing a part equally and integrating well within the system. It's just not about us, it's about the other person, and having to increase the understanding level between the two. I've always said that maybe understanding is the shortest distance between two people. So it's something which can be brought together, which is really memorable, and we can increase our levels of gelling well together, and with a lot of workshops, projects, one minor, one major, one every month. And go ahead, proceed with them.
Yasesvi?
Well, to achieve this, I think I'd just not do this myself. I'd work with other officers, other liberation officers, like the International Students Officer, and ask them how I could work together to decolonize the campus, because everyone should feel like they're at home, not just somewhere else in some place. So it involve a lot of communication, really, and talking to everyone and asking, as the meeting said, asking people what they would like and what they'd want to see in the university to feel more included and feel more at home. That's it.
And Elspeth?
So firstly, shining more light on the Claiming Your Space art project. I think that's doing a really good job, and I'd love to see what's happening. But also decolonizing our campus also includes decolonizing our welfare service. I think one thing I was seeing in the NHS on my placement was trying to bring in more welfare interventions that are not just the Western medicine that we experience. And CBT counseling doesn't work for everyone, especially if their culture has more stigma around mental health. So introducing more interventions that aren't surrounding that, as well as bringing in more staff that are understanding of other cultures and the issues that you might be facing due to being an international student, and all these kind of things. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just going to quickly add, as the lead on decol along with Bree this year, just want to ask you all to define what you think decol means. I think it's something that is really quite convoluted often, and people think just whacking more things on a reading list is going to solve decolonizing. I'm just, with some of the answers, I'm just a bit like concerned that there's not a full understanding of what decolonizing the university and higher education as a whole actually means. I know it's a big topic, but just if you could sum it up in a few words, what it means to you.
Well, as an international student myself, I've always thought university should be treated as in their home, because I'm living away from home. I'm not living in my country. I'm not living with parents or whatever. I can't just fly back home whenever I want to. So I thought, I mean, to me, it just felt like everyone should feel home. Everyone should feel like they're included. Everyone feels a part of a massive family and an environment where they can all be accepted and heard and can be themselves as you will be at home. So that's what I understood it to be. But if it's anything else, I'm always willing to learn and be corrected for it. That's it. Thank you.
So I think a lot of people see decolonizing the curriculum as adding more authors, researchers, rather than taking the focus away, because it's still a majority white and Western. So I think it's trying to bring that balance back. But then also in terms of like the science we do at the university, we've still like, especially in psychology, most of the research is exclusively done on white men undergraduates. So in also improving our research base, decolonizing that I think is really important. But yeah, it's more about restoring the balance and just instead of adding stuff so people feel like it's even more. I think too much is focused on white work is just a classic when it's not. Yeah.
I know I hide it very well. As a straight white guy, I can't necessarily sympathize with some of the experiences that some of our students have gone through. On my classics course, classics is very Roman Greek centric, and on my course we learnt about how different trades from all different sorts of countries affected the cultures and lifestyles of these people. And I think that is core to what decolonization will be for a lot of students, is making them aware that it isn't straight white people who have done all these things by themselves. A lot of amazing achievements that have been done in science, humanitarian, in physics, chemistry, have been achieved from all over the world, and making students aware of that really open their eyes to just how much is out there and encouraging them to explore further.
Awareness does play a very big part in answering that question and making sure that it works as well. And it's more about equal opportunities and sharing of those equal opportunities. We have to make that it reaches out to as many people as it could. And we could, it's more about inclusivity. Even I, as an international student, did face this. There are certain stereotypical biases, there are certain stereotypical habits which we need to break. There's a lot of unlearning, relearning, and adopting different mechanisms and learning as we grow and changing as we grow, because that guarantees us a place here. And actually, yeah, that makes my point.
Hi. So in the athletic union question time, we got asked the question about how we could deal with diversity in sports. I personally have a minor in women and gender studies for my undergrad, but don't feel qualified to tackle issues of race and sexuality. So what are some ways in which you can support the athletics department in dealing with those issues that are contemporary for, this current period that we're living in?
I'll start off with, to be fair, can you be a bit more specific on the issues that are being faced by the athletic? By the athletic union at this point?
Let's go with the same example of transgender students.
Well, because that is a bit of a complicated topic in itself, and we'd have to start. I don't know, we'd have to start asking questions about what people identify as and what people want to do. Because I used to play sport myself, and I can understand that there is a passion toward playing sport, but there's rules. We have to question the entire rules of the sport to begin with, because again, the rules are outdated. They were made in a time where these things weren't talked about and people's identities weren't taken seriously at that time. But now, from my point of view, I'd just say we'd have to start relearning the entire rules and asking questions as to, people's identity does matter, and these rules are outdated. We might have to start with stuff like that to start off with and discuss around these topics. Yeah, that's what
Padmini?
I see you're also standing up for the athletic union officer, and I'm basically, if we as Welfare and Equality, we would work with you and make sure that these issues are tackled. These issues do not basically say that we have to encourage more talent-based programs. There has to be other inclusivity workshops. This is not limited diversity. Diversity, in fact, brings in more talent. And that is what we need to make people aware of and support each other in the process.
Elspeth?
Yeah, so sort of what other people have said, campaign from the beginning to make sure that if people want to participate in sports, they're able to, just ensure that the rules are fair, but also ensure that the welfare support is brought in from the beginning, making sure that everyone feels safe, and accessibility training from the beginning. I think as long as everyone knows the issues are there, then we can address them quicker when they do happen, because things aren't going to be perfect straight away. But yeah, training. I'm sorry, I'm really having like some menopausal brain fog today, but that's all I've got for this one.
Don't apologize. It's an important question, and it's a question that's whilst it is within the sports union, it is a wider issue itself. I feel what you've been through. Sometimes as much as I can ask questions and learn, I don't always feel qualified. But that is why I'd want to work with the union. I want to work with everyone as much as possible, asking questions, making sure that everyone's voices are being heard, and identifying the root causes of these issues. And as been said, a lot of these institutions were made when these issues weren't taken seriously, but now they are, and now is an opportunity for everyone to get their hands on deck and start working together and tackling these issues as a single-bodied force. We can make change positively together. So I'd 100% work with you. I'd be very looking forward to it. So thank you very much.
Round of applause for our Welfare and Equality Officer candidates.
Thank you.
So the next category is our Student Parents and Guardians and Carers Liberation Officer. The Student Parents, Guardian and Carers Officer represents all students who are care providers. The candidates for this role are Hazab Osman. I'm not sure if they're here with us today, so please go on the website, have a read of their manifesto, and get clued up before you put your votes in. So as they're not here, we're going to move straight on to our next category, which is our BAME officer. So the BAME, Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Officer, is responsible for representing Black, Asian and minority ethnic students and liaison with the university and external organisations. The candidates for this role are Sami Ahmed and Teddy Wanik Cotterell. If you'd like to come up to the stage, please. So as we've done with each candidate, as it's just you up here, if you'd like to give your 30-second elevator speech and why students should vote for you. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Samia Ahmed. As a ethnic minority myself, I personally have lived in experience with barriers in terms of accessing education. Before I came here, I took a year out trying to access education, and I have fellow friends and me myself, I personally didn't even know this role existed, and I think that reflects the lack of communication with the student union and the lack of awareness we have around the support we can receive here. And so as BAME officer, I want to help raise awareness about this role, about the support systems that are in place, and help eradicate barriers to access education.
Perfect, thank you so much. I just want to reiterate that Teddy's manifesto is available to read online. If you'd like to view it, I encourage you to go there, read both manifestos before you put your vote in. So my first question is, what immediate action would you propose in order to improve the university experience of Black, Asian, minority ethnic students?
I think, first of all, I'd like to promote the role first, and the support systems available. So working with societies such as ArabSoc and PACSoc, societies that are concentrated with ethnic minority students. This would be a great way to promote the role and the support systems that are in place, and also to create more socials around that as well and create an inclusive environment.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to invite the audience to ask a question if anyone has a question that they would like to ask. No. Go on to my next question. So you represent a large group of students with various experiences. How would you ensure you are representing all who come under this group?
So I would like to either as well as the societies that I'm a part of, I'd like to be part of the Caribbean Society and kind of collaborate with them and ask them what their concerns are with campus. I know a lot of people who have faced discrimination within sports societies as well, so but have been afraid to speak out. So I would like to collaborate with other societies such as the Athletic Union and kind of promote these values that we may have. As a partner student as well, one of the requirements and criteria you have to fit is to be a ethnic minority student. And I think coming to university is one thing, but maintaining and learning the skills that you have to like develop to be a part of, you know, to complete your degree. I'd like to maybe implement some changes and help create this support systems for these students as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. There's no more questions from the floor. Could we give her a big round of applause, please?
So we've got 2 positions left to scrutinise, and funnily enough, this next one is the Chair of Scrutiny Committee. The Chair of Scrutiny Committee will chair and lead the Students' Union Scrutiny and Disciplinary Committees. We have one candidate for this, Fatty Cure. And if they are here, could they come up to the stage? We don't think they're here, but as with all our positions, if you head over to the Student Union website, you can learn all about their manifesto and vote accordingly as to who you think for the role. So, moving on to our final position is President of the Students' Union. As President, your principal responsibility is to act as the leading voice for all students at the university and the Students' Union. You will subsequently become chair of our trustee board and be responsible for developing and implementing the strategic direction for the Students' Union. The candidates for this role are Ali Zuhad, Dan Paston, Luke Grange, Maddie Ball, Owen Lukens joining virtually, and Shah Yassin Ali, if they could all come to the floor. Brilliant. Maddie, just because you're closest to the podium, you've got... Yeah, we got Owen online.
I'm here if anyone can
Give us
hear
a
me.
second.
Don't know if anyone can hear me. Oh, you can see me. Hi.
Owen, can you hear us all right?
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can't hear you.
You can hear me? You can't hear me?
Are you on mute?
Not one.
Owen, can you please check that the mic's on at your end? It's because we're not getting any feed from yourself.
It definitely should be on. I'm not sure why it's not. Any better? Can you hear me? No? Can you hear me now? Is that better?
How was your show? Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Is it better? Hello, hello. Word to word. Can you hear me?
Okay, what we'll do is we will
Nothing?
start running through everyone's manifesto or everyone's opening statements, and Owen will wrap up with you for opening statements. So, Maddie, if you'd like to kick things off, you've got 40 seconds.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Maddie. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm a 4th-year fine arts student. I'm running to be your next president because I know I have what it takes to prioritise the university experience that you deserve. As your president, I promise to tackle sexual violence, student well-being, ensure value for money and sustainability whilst prioritising inclusivity and accessibility. Vote for me if you resonate with these issues and if you want a candidate that isn't afraid to hold the university to account whilst maintaining working relationships to ensure lasting change. Vote Maddie today because she's mad about you. Thank you.
Luke.
Hello, I'm Luke Grange, pronouns he, him, and I'm running to be your president. I'm currently an MA History student. I have 4 years here at Newcastle University as both undergraduate and a postgraduate now, so I understand the issues of both sides. My manifesto is trying to cover community, welfare and communication. I think these are the 3 most key aspects that we need to improve here at the Student Union. I just want to be a friendly face that anybody can come to. I want an open door policy, and I just want to be the best president that you guys deserve. So thank you. Vote Luke. Grange for change.
Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I have absolutely nothing prepared because I really don't want to get voted in. So don't vote for me, but do join Socks Up because it will be the best £5 or 1 pence you ever spent. So cheers.
Shah.
Hello there, everyone. My name's Shah Yassin Ali. I'm going to be your next president. My manifesto resonates about improving diversity within our union, making sure the union is available to everyone, and also to really tackle the issue of mental health, as well as truly holding the university to account. I've read the university's constitution, I've analysed the university's financial documents, and I know exactly where to hit the university the hardest, so I can deliver a real change to your student experience. Thank you.
Owen, can you hear us and do you want to give it a crack?
Yeah.
You got 40 seconds.
Hi, my name is Owen, my friend of the day that I'm going to be your student union president. Very sorry about being here. My compulsory deal with Scotland is like 7% behind your and very limited strength. I believe I'm best suited for the role of president because I've been volunteering, organising, and working in the student union relentlessly over the past 4 years. Helped find society my first year, spent 3 years on right committees, I've done 2 freshers week, voted in student council for 3 years, held positions on 5 NUSU committees, volunteered hundreds of hours in a variety of roles, and got an NCL Plus leadership award out of it as well. My manifesto, which I think is most best aligned for the presidential role, focuses on prioritizing student voice, fighting dodgy landlords over student homes, and developing realistic, effectual climate solutions. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Owen. First question is for Shah and Ali, but they're not here. It's pre-submitted. Ali, not here. Yes, it's for Shah and, well, Shah. In your manifesto, you talk about mental health. However, comments from your debate on Friday suggest that you are not concerned about your own mental health or your colleagues' mental health by working overtime. Would you like to address these comments?
Yes, I would like to address these comments. Well, first of all, if elected president, I would not expect my staff to work beyond their hours. That would not be right. Those comments I made were towards me. So in terms of if elected president, I would be working over hours. I would certainly not expect this from other members of staff. It would be a case of, if elected, it would be a case of achieving the best possible outcome for students, because that would be my role. Because I know the demands that the presidency holds. I've read the constitution, I've looked at the NUSU's financial documents, and I understand what the role involves. And I'm personally committing myself to working overtime. That's just me personally. I just want to clarify that because I know that the vital importance of the role of being president. And obviously, being president is a role which ultimately affects the lives of people. And that's why I would be working, me personally, that's why I would personally be working to achieve a real change to the lives of students. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up, I got written down here to follow up on it. 4 weeks in, or about 2 months into the job or so, we've got Freshers Week, everything's kicking off, meetings and everything with the university. You're working overtime, you're doing 70 hours a week, and you burn out. Then what? How will you represent students and look after their needs if you're having to take time off work as a result of burnout?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Well, I currently already work quite hard through my law degree while also managing my various extracurricular activities such as Faith and Belief Officer. I sit on various other committees within the union such as Finance and Risk, Steering, I've sat on Scrutiny. I've had to manage very tough working hours to balance everything. So I am quite good at prioritizing, I'm quite good at managing my schedule, and that's how I would ensure that, first of all, I wouldn't get burnt out because I would take the time necessary for me to relax throughout my term as president, so that I can ensure that the voice of the students are represented. Thank you.
This next question is for all of our candidates. Many of you seek to hold the university accountable on some issues, and one of these issues picked up on was strikes. But for much of the improvements SABs have made over recent years, this has relied on a very positive working relationship with the university. How will you both hold the university accountable but not damage the relationship to ensure that students actually benefit from your time in office? Luke.
So I think with sort of holding the university to accountable, I've already sort of done that through my work as a school rep through history, classics and archaeology. So last year during the pandemic, we had meetings with the Vice Chancellor and we tried to hold him account for the things that we felt the university was severely lacking in. I think with strikes, it's about a balanced approach. It's not about going heavy-handed on one side. It's about looking at what students are looking for and what the lecturers are looking for and finding a balance between them. I think getting a good, sorry, I'm kind of stumbling over my own words, but getting a good relationship with the university is important because at the end of the day, if we offend them, they're not going to want to work with us. So we need to work within the system currently and try and do the best we can. Sorry about that stumbly.
Maddie.
Yeah, thank you. I'd say that I've got quite a lot of experience with holding a university to account whilst maintaining really strong working relationships, especially with the Wellbeing Service at the moment, as our campaign is sort of targeting them, but we're also having a working relationship with them. And I think it's really important to keep an open dialogue. But I think when it comes to holding the university to account, especially over strikes, you have to be able to engage with the student body, engage the student voice, and make sure you're going in as a collective to show the university that this is actually the majority voice that's wanted. Students need to feel able to back the strikes and to be able to get these demands. So I think, yes, you've got to be able to hold the university to account, but in doing so, you always have to maintain a good working relationship, but you also need to show evidence of why you're holding them to account, otherwise they don't listen to you in the first place. So I'd want to help mobilize the student body to sort of have evidence that, the university, you need to be listening, and there's need for this.
Shah.
Thank you very much. So I think it is very important that we do maintain strong ties with the university so that we can achieve the best possible outcome with regards to bringing about change. With regards to strikes, we've seen that strikes have not worked for the past 4 years, yet student studies have been constantly disrupted. I would bring about a new approach to this. First of all, if elected president, I would sit on the finance committee. The finance committee ultimately has oversight over staff pay. What I'd do then is I would actually work with all members of the finance committee, see why they constantly vote down the UCU demands and try and compromise and negotiate so that we can actually achieve a fair outcome for staff while also achieving an effective change without disrupting the studies of students. Thank you.
Owen, just give me a second. I'm going to come and put the microphone next to the TV. When you're ready.
Oh, wow, this is great. Yes, the balancing the relationship with the university is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially with my heavy involvement with strikes. So the reason that staff members are striking is because the university does not properly hold up the workers' rights in terms of cutting pensions, overworking staff members, reducing pay, horrible trends in inclusivity and diversity within the university. And it's really something that I'm very passionate about. However, I hope that the university, as it is mandated, I believe, to listen to the student union, listen to the student body, will have respect for where this point is coming from. And it is something that there are many other elements to working with president. Strikes are one major part that I want to think about, but I feel like it's about building respect within the university through fighting dodgy landlords, for example, and elevating the student voice on campus. It's a difficult relationship treading that line, but it's something that I'm really looking forward to testing. I believe it's being stopped.
Dan?
Like to say I'm very impressed with the rest of the candidates for actually knowing what's going on. But I'd say I'd like to implement a lot of meetings, because I think what we need more of in the union and in the uni is bureaucracy and just everything, just slowing everything else down. So a lot of long, boring meetings where nothing gets decided is, I think, the way I'd like to move forward with everything.
The next question. Despite what some may think, the president is not in charge of the other sabbatical officers. However, much of the role is ensuring the team continues to work together and keeping everyone on the same trajectory, which Abby has done this year so far. How will you manage this over the course of your presidentship? Shah.
Well, I think, like you've mentioned, it's very important that the president works with other members of the sabbatical team. So I think it's really about listening to the concerns that the sabbatical team have, taking a united approach, because when we're united, we can actually bring about a lot more change than when we're actually divided. So it's about working with them, listening to their concerns, and really bring about a change through that. I also think it's extremely important that we continue to reach out to students, continue to gather their opinions, so that the student body is united as one, so we can deliver real change. Thank you.
Owen, I'm going to come to you now when you're ready.
Fantastic. One of the ways in which that I'd like to keep the sabbatical team working well and looking after themselves is generally entering the role and the job with compassion. So as from my time as well for the Bragg Society, I'm very well versed in looking after people and making sure that I'm leading them, but with compassionate gaze, and make sure that they're sort of meeting their sort of requirements as to taking breaks and not overworking and not being overstressed. One of the other things that I would like to work on is focusing on the collaborative part, because obviously there is a huge overlap in what some of the workers do. However, I would also like to give priority to those who, for example, the welfare and quality officer who just focus on welfare rather than the president.
Maddie.
Thanks. Yeah, so as I've been welfare officer for Sexpression for 3 years, and I've been the president of It Happens Here for 2 years, I have quite a lot of extensive work with keeping in touch with everyone in committee, making sure we all have the same values and that our goals all align. I think being connected in that way is incredibly important, but also being a listening ear, being understanding, checking in. We have like a heart system in our committee chats that sort of lets you know how much work people are able to take on. So I feel like something like that would be beneficial. So like a green heart has been like, yeah, you're great, you can take on work, like help with others, but it's more of factors like just checking in with each other, being there, having a listening ear, and also just like empathy, understanding what people are going through. Yeah, that's a bit crap.
Luke.
If I may be so bold, I think I'm quite a friendly person. I genuinely think that is important to getting along with people, being a friendly person, but if you want sort of my experience, I've been president of NUGS, I've been the treasurer of NUGS. Getting a committee to work together to put on a show is a difficult job, but we managed it. So I think I have what it takes to manage working together with the other sabbatical officers. Being a school rep, all the schools, we have different needs, but working together and compromising to sort of have a united front is really important in that aspect. So I think we could really do that together as a sabbatical team, and working together just make sure everything gets done quicker and everything that you guys need is done. So yes, that's why you should vote me.
Dan?
In terms of experience, I've been, I don't know if anyone's mentioned it, but I am actually president of SOC, so just keeping that out there. I describe my leadership style with one word, which is delegation. I will make everyone else do all the work and just take the money and run. So that's my platform.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Yeah, there is one. We'll go that one. That was the hand.
Hi, and this is just a question to all the candidates, but obviously strikes have impacted this academic year, and there's been a lot of talk in all candidates' manifestos about how it would support students who support the strike, but there is an element of our population who don't support the strike, so I'm just wondering, as president, how would you represent their voices as well?
Well, I think it's important to sort of make sure that both sides are being heard. And for example, during this round of strikes, I've been sort of giving lectures to third-year history students, helping them on their current assessments which are coming up, because they've kind of been abandoned. I think the strike aims are really important, but I think the way the lecturers have done it this time, they've abandoned a lot of students, and so their welfare and educational needs have been neglected. And I think the sabbatical team as a whole should be there to support students in the sort of absence of their lecturers being there. So I think taking a neutral stance is more important than taking sides as as president, because you supporting one side, you're not supporting all students. So I think supporting students by being neutral and helping all sides is the best thing you can do. That's my opinion. I don't know all the answers, but I try.
Maddie.
So one of the key things I think has been an issue with students not supporting the strikes is actually the amount of information that they're receiving about why lecturers are striking. I know some lecturers have chosen to explain why, others don't. That's completely up to them. But I think as a sabbatical officer, you need to be providing this information, making it accessible to help students understand why their lecturers are striking, and also having support for students in place as well, so they feel able to support their lecturers striking. So having extra library support, having student teach outs, which I think has been really fantastic. There's been quite a few going on at the moment, which I think is really good. And just having enough spaces where students have a dialogue to understand what's going on. But I think half of the problem is the fact that a lot of students don't understand why lecturers are striking, and also because of this can fail to sympathise with the movement. So I think it's about having that voice for everybody.
Shah.
Well, I think we've seen over the past few years that we've had 4 years in a row of strikes, and every single time strikes have failed. So if elected president, I would take a new, radically different approach. I would actually seek to work with Finance Committee, which is the committee which actually decides staff pay ultimately. And I would work to see why are they constantly rejecting UCU's pay rise. It's important that the president actually mediates between UCU and the university, so that we can actually achieve real staff pay increases without affecting the experiences of students. It's about ensuring that staff get their fair pay rises, and ultimately the educational quality that students get is ultimately not affected. And that's why I would take a different, radical approach by working with the uni and working with UCU and mediating between them to get a fair pay deal and also a fair educational experience for students. Thank you.
Owen, on you go.
So one of the areas that I would really like to improve relating to strikes is the communication between striking staff members and you see the students union and the university itself. A lot of that is related to why staff members are striking, how some of the effects of the strikes can be mitigated. So obviously having an impact on students is really, really important. But the purpose of the strikes is that if the student body is motivated enough and sort of sees the real effects of the strikes and their education being sort of put on, not really being prioritised by the university, it would really motivate the students to take action. Because the state of the university now, all of the issues we have in teaching, especially regarding
student life, because it allows students to go on more fun activities they wouldn't maybe necessarily have the time to during when they had lectures included, and not limited to any and all sock events. Not to come across too much as a one issue politician, but yeah, join sock is all I have to say. I'm getting really bored of this now, but sorry.
I have 3 questions, all of which are for Dan. Sorry, 1 question for Dan. Okay. What do you plan to do if you win?
Immediately drop out and give
Thank you.
it to someone else who genuinely deserves it, because everyone else has put in a lot of effort, and I feel kind of bad coming in and just being a bit of an idiot. So don't vote for me. Vote for someone who's actually put in any effort, because they deserve it way more than I do. But do join Sock. Thanks.
Hi, I was just wondering if any of you had any specific policies for postgrad students that you could just briefly touch on.
Thank you very much. So my policies resonate around improving graduate skills. This includes skills for postgrads, ensuring that postgraduate students and undergraduate students have the necessary skills so that they can succeed within the employment world, within future careers, and so that they can really hit the ground running when they graduate. So yes, that's my policy around postgraduate studies.
Owen, postgrad policies.
I'd say on my manifesto, the only specific policy that I talk about is related to strikes, because postgraduate students who teach are eligible to join the university college union. And basically, they are getting a terrible deal from the university at the moment without getting any contracts for when they're teaching and are paid very, very little for the work that they're doing. So that is the area that I would like to focus on regarding postgraduate.
Maddie.
Yeah, so my manifesto doesn't specifically have any points about postgraduate studies, but it does focus a lot on inclusion, intersectionality, and well-being support. And I think all of these things are applicable to all students, no matter what stage of study. And I really strongly feel that without addressing these issues, no students can really embrace their academia or their co-curricular life in full. I think that applies to postgraduates. But as a sabbatical officer, I'd be working with a postgrad officer as well, trying to find out what issues are actually what postgrad issues there are and how we can start to tackle them. But yeah, my manifesto is more broadly supporting everybody so they're enabled to be able to study.
Luke.
So as someone who has been both an undergraduate and a postgraduate here at Newcastle, I think I can understand the sort of issues of both sides and the transitional issues. So in my manifesto, one of my welfare points is to get more welfare advisors for each individual school, and I think that would definitely help postgraduate students who are sometimes left to a side in each school, and it focuses on undergraduate students. I also think with my sort of community policy of trying to get graduates to be able to join societies for a couple of years after they graduate, it will give postgraduates who just come here for maybe 1 year a chance still to stay in their society and also help employability within that society. So yeah, those are sort of my policies towards postgrads.
Dan.
My manifesto doesn't have any policies on any issues, let alone postgraduate ones, so unfortunately I cannot answer this question. Sorry.
Is there any final questions from the audience? Lauren, your hand was up first.
How are you going to work to include liberation officers more? Because, I mean, in the short time I've been here at Newcastle, I've never been aware of any of the liberation officers, only the SABs. I mean, of course, the SAB roles are full-time, so you've got a lot more work to do. However, even though the liberation officers are still representing students, I think that representation needs to be out there. So how are you going to work to include liberation officers more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of these things are about integration in all of sabbatical officer decisions, university decisions. I personally think that the liberation officers should be a paid role in some sort of part-time basis, especially because the amount of work that you take on these specific issues is really crucial and very important. But for me, it's about having an open discussion with you all, aligning our views with each other, but also having these issues like accessibility, diversity, all of those things integrated in all of our decisions so they're not an afterthought. Because I know myself, I've experienced accessibility being such an afterthought. So yeah, it's all about integration for me.
Luke.
Yeah, I do think this is a great question because I think a lot of the liberation officers are seen as something totally separate and in some cases lesser. And I think one of the sort of simplest and keyest things we could do is a lot of money is put into the publicity of the sort of full-time paid sabbatical officer roles. Why can't your names be out there in the hallway as well? Like just simple things like that. I also think you need to be in the meetings where you're not in them currently, like education executive meeting. Why can't the disability officer be in those meetings to make sure that what's being discussed is inclusive? So I think it's just about sort of, as Maddie was saying, integration and just simple little things like publicity, making sure that your name is just as out there as everybody else's because you're no less important.
Shah.
Thank you. As a current liberation officer myself, one of the things I've noticed is the lack of publicity, just as Lucas said, around liberation officers. There really needs to be more publicity. A lot of students are unaware that liberation officers actually exist. So we really need to drive that campaign up. We really need to include liberation officers in more committee meetings, speak with them more often, and to really get their views, because I think this is something that we've lacked this year, and liberation officers have always lacked because they have always been seen as a separate bunch of officers. And it's really about giving them more money, giving them more power, and obviously increasing awareness of their positions.
Owen, when you're ready.
Yeah, some of the other candidates were actually picked from what I was going to say. Making the liberation officer a part-time job would be actually fantastic to give back to all of the many, many hours that were put in. Publicising the liberation officers, who they actually are around the student union, would be a massive help. I'm very involved in the student union, and I could not name half of the liberation officers because they just haven't been publicised. And it's a massive shame that their work isn't getting appreciated as well. Integrating the liberation officers into decision making more would be fantastic as part of my manifesto point of view voice, so that we can actually hear a wider representation, wider representative group of people, and integrating liberation officers into other areas as well, such as in student societies and student campaigning. So, for example, there's a campaign or society related to disability. Disabled students officers would be more involved in that and feel that would be a way to push both union engagement and the opportunities for that liberation officer.
Thanks. And Luke. Oh, you've already done this. Oh, it's done.
I think everyone's made some great points because I'm not going to lie, before I came here today, I hadn't heard of half of the roles people are running for. Sorry, not been keeping that up to date. But yeah, I think I can't really add anything interesting because I've mentioned Sock a few times before, and I think we've all quite bored of that bit now. So I'm just going to say, everyone, you made some great points. Well done.
Our final question, and then we've got a couple of points of clarity, is from Abby, our current president.
Okay, I have a fun question. So at the moment, myself and Simon, CEO, sat over there. Shout out to Simon. We're currently putting in a bid in the subvention for a multi-million-pound refurbishment of the student union. If you are president, you have to work with the project manager and the CEO and obviously the entire university to make sure that this is a space that works best for students. I want to know what you would do with the space in the union and what your priorities would be there.
Go on, Owen. You can have this one first. Hang on. You're good.
The absolute first thing that I would do is fix the lift in the student union building. It is incredibly inaccessible, and I can take the stairs. There are so many issues that you can't, it doesn't work most of the time. It's absolutely ridiculous, and you cannot claim that you're an accessible student union without working there. The disabled or the accessible student access toilet are on the top floor. You need a lift to get in. Sorry, at these. Second point would be putting in probably some more space or rearrange the space for a student-run charity shop to reduce the waste, reduce every single year, but reduce food and get rid of all of their, I don't know, plates and stuff that they don't need anymore, but some of these students buy new ones. That kind of recycling would be absolutely fantastic. And the third one would be, I don't know, probably more hands.
Luke.
I'm so glad you asked this question because it's in my manifesto. So some of my ideas, I have too many. So some of them are, so the Hadrian building, a lot of the rooms there, I think they should better represent societies that use them. I think we could have societies creating artworks that represent their sort of their members. And I think we should celebrate the history of some societies, because I'm in a society that's 70 years old this year, and there's nothing in this union that would sort of highlight that. So I think we really need to get across that this is a union for all students. Some other ideas, I think we could have a box office for any society that is holding an event, whether that's music, drama, even athletic events. I think we could do something like that. I just think we need to make it a better representative space for students.
Maddie?
I like all of these points that have been suggested so far. One of the key things for me is obviously going to be accessibility, making sure the lighting is accessible, making sure the buildings are actually accessible, the toilets are open to all genders. I'd be quite keen to have, I know at the moment the welfare space is being worked on, the offices are being changed into like a welfare room. I really like that idea. But also having a place for student-run businesses. I think it'd be really nice to have like a market space for students to be able to promote themselves, promote their small businesses, a space for societies where they can advertise themselves. Yeah, I like all of the ideas so far. I think this would need a lot of thought, but also a lot of student voice to see what students actually want as well.
Shah.
So I would agree with Maddie that we should try and make the student union building as accessible as possible. But I think the most important thing to do is actually listen to the students and see what they want, how they want their union building to look like, because ultimately I might have an idea, but the rest of the student population might be thinking we should use the space for something else. So I think it's about running a clear, thorough consultation, speaking with students from all backgrounds, all religions, all genders, to really get their opinions on how we can really make the SU a building which truly represents them.
And Dan.
Well, I'm currently very deep in my overdraft at the moment, and as soon as the words multi and million were said, I had maybe quite large dollar signs in my eyes. So if I could get away with it, maybe some embezzlement. But you didn't hear that. But also, I like the houseplant idea. So those two things.
Great stuff. Just before we wrap up this candidate's question for the president, we've got 3 points of clarity. The first one from Liv.
Hi. So there's been a lot of mention about finance committee. Just an FYI, finance committee do not control how the staff are paid. So Abby's president actually sits on finance committee, and she went to an emergency one during the strike action, and she did vote in favour of the UCU thing that was the proposal. Finance committee don't control exactly how everyone's paid. So I think saying that you would use finance committee and things like that as a point of clarification isn't necessarily the truth. It wouldn't actually be possible. So just an FYI.
Another FYI, on the point of liberation officers, so I think there's some really great points about publicising them more, but we do try to create as many opportunities for the liberation officers to get involved. It's just whether they have the capacity to do it. So they're already invited to a host of university meetings. They've been at the RECSAT, Racial Equality Charter. They've been on our misogyny as a hate work a little bit. And we really try to involve them as much as possible, but we understand that students with their studies and so much going on, it can be hard. There's also chances for them to run campaigns if they want to at Welfare, Liberation and Campaigns Exec. I'm often saying, guys, is there anything you want to do? Is there anything I can help you with? We've done some incredible initiatives with George and Nate, but it's hard sometimes when people don't show up.
And mine was just a quick one because I'm getting excited about potential refurbishment. If you're referring to the buildings just up here, like Martin Luther King Room, K80 Room, etc., then that's great. We have that space. The Hadrian Building and actually the rooms beyond NUSU Central belong to the university. Yeah. So no, it's just to say, if you want to fight for that space, then you need to prepare your fight for that.
Round of applause for the candidates for president. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending today's candidate question time. A reminder, voting has now been open for 2.5 hours on the Student Union website. So head over to nusu.co.uk/elections to cast your vote for sabbatical officers, liberation officers, and in the NUS referendum. Thanks, everyone.
And can we have a large round of applause for our hosts of the afternoon, Livia Scott and Fergus Mainland. Thank you.